Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to another real numbers video, box office kind of talk, speculation, just discussions about movies in general. I am joined once again today by the one, the only, Mike from LaughingStock Media. Mike, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hey guys, it's Mike here from LaughingStock Media. How's it going?
It's good, man. It's good. Thanks for joining me on this. Anyway, guys, we actually did a video a very long time ago, actually, about how and why and it's possible that you can actually make a good anime movie at Hollywood, or even just, doesn't need to be Hollywood or the Japanese markets or the China markets, whoever's going to be making these films in the near future. But it's possible. We talked at length about how it was possible, what they need to focus on, and everything else. So I'll be linking that in the description section below at the end of this video if you're all interested in watching that in general. But today we're going to be talking about Ghost in the Shell coming out at the end of this particular month, March 31st, 2017. And at this point right now, we have a film coming out that's from Paramount Pictures that doesn't necessarily seem to be, I guess, tracking very well. I don't feel like I've heard as much about it as I have about other movies this month, like Logan or Beauty and the Beast. Even Power Rangers seems to have more of a beefy audience in terms of marketing than this particular film. And I've just been sitting around wondering, and I asked Mike himself, like, do you think that this is a bad thing, just not in just terms of what Ghost in the Shell needs to be very successful, but just as the anime community as a whole?
I think that it could very well be. It's kind of difficult to determine, and that's largely because I even did a poll about this on my own Twitter, asking people, are you excited for the Ghost in the Shell live-action movie? And a lot of them seem like they're really not, and I feel like a lot of that comes down to kind of being spurned and kind of, not having things go their way in terms of previous anime adaptations. So, of course, let's get out of the way, Dragon Ball Evolution being number one, and I guess maybe you could say Avatar: The Last Airbender. In some ways, people want to view it as an anime or as a part of the same kind of vein, and that was horribly botched by M. Night Shyamalan, who fortunately is seeing a kind of a return nowadays. But I feel like a lot of them are just kind of like battered housewives. They just don't want to get into the whole industry, so they just say no, any live action anime just isn't going to work. And I don't know.
The one thing I kind of got was a lot of people were really mad about Scarlett Johansson's casting as the cyborg counter-terrorist kind of agent that's the protagonist of the film or the story. And I can understand that, but I've never really had a problem with it. First of all, she's a cyborg, isn't she? She's some kind of a robot. I'm not necessarily too familiar with the entire series, as it were, but I'm pretty sure she's some kind of a robot, which I guess you can make it kind of somewhat like, they are basically whitewashing the whole mythology and everything. But I don't feel like this is as bad as something as like The Wall or even The Last Samurai, where you basically have this one white guy show up in China or Japan or something and ends up becoming such a hero in that own culture. Like, why do you need to do that? I don't necessarily take it as in the same vein. And also, I feel like this was the most I've ever heard about this film was Scarlett Johansson's casting and the fact that she wasn't Asian, Japanese, or just of Asian descent. And this whole concept of whitewashing kind of got into this very early. I think it put a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So much so that I was actually reading that the studio actually looked into maybe digitalizing her, making her have a little bit more Asian features and everything. But I think they decided against that. You got like yellow or digital yellow face is probably not the best thing to do, honestly. So I can understand why people are mad about that. Maybe that is the reason that they're not necessarily excited. And it also goes to show, like, Ghost in the Shell might be really popular in certain fragments or certain sections of the anime community. It might be popular, very widely popular outside of the domestic market, which I think is probably what they're banking on. But at the same time, like, this isn't Dragon Ball. This isn't Naruto or Bleach or anything like that. It's not like a uniformly accepted form of entertainment for everyone. I mean, do you think that's playing into this?
Yes, I think that that's probably another part of it. Even though Ghost in the Shell was a very influential film. You know, it's regarded as kind of like an anime masterpiece, and they always make sure to remind us of that during the trailers, from the very influential and masterwork of anime. You know, they always want to make it seem even more amazing than it is, because they want to make sure people aren't weirded out by the fact that it's an anime, and they still are nowadays. But ultimately, I feel like it really does come down to that, because even though they even had shows like Standalone Complex Second Gig on Toonami and Adult Swim, it just wasn't Dragon Ball Z. It wasn't even maybe, you know, something as big as like Yu Yu Hakusho over here. It wasn't like Rurouni Kenshin or Naruto, or as you said, Bleach. It's not one of those big shonen action anime that people are really into. It's a little bit deeper. It's a lot slower. So ultimately, I could see why maybe that's a part of the lack of interest. Now, you'd mentioned the whole thing with whitewashing. Honestly, I don't really have too much of a problem with Scarlett Johansson playing the main character, because when I watch the anime, from what I've seen at least, I don't see Asian characters. I just see the characters usually, you know, unless they're making a differentiation. Like, you can tell a lot of times when a character is supposed to be from a certain area or region or ethnic background. But with her, again, as you mentioned, she's an android, so it doesn't really matter. And of course, you know, like, she could easily be portrayed as Asian or Caucasian or whatever you need her to be. And at the end of the day, Scarlett Johansson is a big box office draw, also like Matt Damon in The Wall, as you mentioned, which is probably why they picked him in the first place. So if you want her, you know, someone who is a lead actress who could really handle this role, who's got the sex appeal considering what she runs around wearing the whole time, and she has, you know, people who are going to go to the box office and see her, I think Scarlett Johansson's actually a pretty good pick, even though I wouldn't necessarily say she's the best actress in Hollywood. I think that she's certainly like someone who's going to be a draw.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's just one thing we have to be kind of wary about. Not wary, but accepting about in this new age of filmmaking, especially with Hollywood, you know, kind of getting buddy with the Chinese market and the Japanese market and all these other international markets. They know these places are growing up. They're making money enough to actually sustain and make their own films, big films that compete with us. So what's going on now is that these United States studios are being buddy with them because they know that this is the future. And we're seeing a lot of people like Scarlett Johansson, like Matt Damon, who know that same thing and have people telling them that if you're not a star in China, if you're not a star in Japan, if you're not a star in this thing, you're not a star anymore. That's where all the money is coming from. And obviously, it just makes a whole lot of sense that that's probably what they're thinking about when they take these roles. Is this might not be a big domestic movie, but this will be a huge international movie if they do it right. And, you know, you and I were talking before we started recording, and I think it's absolutely true. Is, you know, you and I, we follow this at a fairly regular pace. And like I said in the beginning of the video, it's just kind of being buried under all the other big movies coming out this month. Logan, Power Rangers, Beauty and the Beast, and all these other things. And even Kong, although Kong is coming out much sooner than this film, but even Kong is much of a flop that is potentially going to be. You know, it's coming out, but you see a lot more from it. You see a lot more YouTube videos. You see a lot more exposure for it.
I mean, let's be honest. It's Samuel L. Jackson fighting a giant. I think that sounds pretty awesome to me. Like, that might be enough for my ticket.
No, it'll be enough for me too. But I'm just saying, in general, I don't want to stomp all over that film. It's funny, you know, pun intended. But I don't want to talk about that so much. But yeah, like it's coming out in a very, very crowded, very, very intense month for competition. And I think what they're doing, at least what I hope they're doing, I have no real ways to back this up, is I hope they're focusing on the international markets to make this a big film, at least internationally, to make a lot of money. And I'd like to get into the predictions soon here, but I mean, I think that the main point here is that should we as a anime community, whether you like Ghost in the Shell or not, whether you, I guess whether you connect with it, whether you're mad about the whole whitewashing concept or not, should we basically support this as an anime movie, as a this is what our passion is, and we need to show them, put our money where our mouth is, that this is what we want them to do, and we want them to do it well. Because even if, whatever your thoughts about what the Ghost in the Shell story is, or any of the, production problems that they've had, or even of the, just the drama that they've had making this film, you would kind of imagine, or I would think a lot of people have said that this is looking like it's kind of a faithful adaptation. It's weird. It has the same feel as the anime for the most part. And I don't know how that's going to translate to the final product, but it looks like they really did try to make it somewhat kindred spirit to the original and not just take it and do their own thing. So is that enough for the anime community to come out in droves and support this thing, just to kind of show them that this is what we want, and you need to take the same concept here and put it onto other things that we really love?
That's a really difficult kind of proposition and I guess question at the same time, because on one hand, let's use the scale of balance here. On one hand, I personally don't believe in supporting a movie like necessarily just to like help out an industry or to help out a franchise or something. I'm more of someone who says if you think a movie's going to be good, go see it. It's all really based on your own taste and your opinions. So for me, if I didn't have any connection to anime or Ghost in the Shell, or if I did have connection to anime and stuff, but I had no real interest in seeing the movie, I might not do it. But on the other hand, I really want this movie to succeed financially, and that's because I really do want there to be good anime adaptations. And I feel like Hollywood is always looking for the next thing to like start expanding out and start to adapt. They have comic books right now, they have Star Wars, all these franchises. They're really looking for other franchises. So if we get a good adaptation of Ghost in the Shell that makes a good amount of money at the box office, more than they expect, then they might go, hey, wait a second, people actually could go see anime movies and make us money at the same time. So maybe we should start looking at this community, looking at the things that they really like, and saying, will that make movies that other people will go to see? And of course, like, if they do Dragon Ball again, or if they do Yu Yu Hakusho, or Hunter x Hunter, or Naruto, or Bleach in real Western movies, like big blockbusters where they dump hundreds of millions of dollars into it, and people become even bigger fans of it as a result, and we see a lot more influx into the fan bases, that seems like something that can only really help and benefit the community, because we want other people to like what we like, right? I know a lot of times we're kind of elitist about it, where it's like, no, I don't want these people to like what I like, casuals. But at the end of the day, I feel like it'll be better for everyone. And it won't be kind of like how comics were before they started blowing up with the movies, where it's just like, oh, that's just for nerds and weirdos. The same thing is kind of with anime right now, where it still has that stigma. But if movies take off, well, that's going to go away, because people are going to be seeing them. And even all the people who are chastising fans, they're going to be in those theaters like, man, I can't wait to see what Goku's going to do in the next movie,
Exactly. And the people who don't necessarily follow it, I mean, we've been having now almost 2 decades worth of, like, literally, we're getting very close to almost 2 decades worth of comic book movies ruling the blockbuster market. And manga, for the most part, manga and anime aren't a huge step away from it. They're basically, like I said, kindred spirits of each other, just different cultures, different kind of concepts. And I think that might be part of the hesitation, is if we're faithful to that culture's concept, maybe the domestic market won't get it. Maybe the wider domestic market won't get it. And maybe that's why it's kind of anime, for the most part, anime and manga fandom is on the cusp of, the I guess, popular culture entertainment spectrum, where people are like, yeah, I like it. And you also have people out there, a lot of people out there, who really like it, but don't talk about not liking it, because it has that cultural stigma. It's like, oh, you're a weird guy. It's like, you get off to little girls and anime. Like, it's weird. And I understand where that comes from, but I also feel like it's just a weird stigma that I guess people believe for whatever reasons. But I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Just conceptually, if it's a bad movie, then it doesn't necessarily deserve to make money. But it's weird to have these situations. And very rarely do I think we have these situations as fandoms, where it's not about the particular movie. It's about what the movie represents to a bigger whole. And this is what this is. It's basically the only time we're going to get it this year. I think the only other big anime movie coming out this particular year is the Death Note adaptation on Netflix. And the way Netflix never gives us any numbers or anything. People don't pay to see it. So we're never going to really know whether it was a big enough success. I mean, we'll get an idea. It will probably be like, oh yeah, it was a huge success. People watched it all the time. Netflix wouldn't be making that movie if they didn't think it was going to be a success. They have information and statistics to prove one thing or another. They had information to show that people who watched House of Cards, the British miniseries, were actually watching Kevin Spacey movies, so that's why they kind of made that show. They know things enough to know it's going to be successful, so they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't think it was going to be successful. So, I mean, I don't know whether or not it will be, but I do know that this is going to be a big film either way, just to kind of, like you were saying, show Hollywood, show all these filmmakers that yes, you can do a good anime film and people are going to go watch it because it's something that they kind of grew up with, aspire to watch and everything, and there is a market. So I completely understand, but I just want to ask, how much do you think it's going to make?
I think, honestly, I don't see it necessarily recouping the entire budget in the United States. Now, either that goes for the announced budget or the combination of the budget when it comes to the production and marketing. But overseas, I think it'll make well in excess of the combined budget. I feel like that international market is definitely going to push it over the edge. It's not like they spent $500 million on it, so I think it's entirely possible that they'll make a profit.
I agree with that. I completely agree with that. If I were to kind of, just because I like to put a little predictions every now and then, just so everyone who doesn't know what Mike is talking about is, we don't necessarily know the production budget right now, but I think I mentioned is about 90 to 100 million is estimated how much they spent on it. And then you got to imagine that they spent about just as much, if not equal amount on the marketing on this movie, basically in the States and worldwide. Like we said, probably more so worldwide than in the States because it hasn't been blanketed marketing. People aren't 100% aware of this movie coming out at the end of the month. Maybe it will kind of pick up as it goes on, but we just absolutely don't know. Just from my predictions, I think they'll start pushing it hard pretty soon here. They still spent a lot of money on this to kind of let it just kind of fizzle and burn out in the States. So I'm pretty sure they're going to be kind of hoping for somewhere around 100 million. I would say 95 to 100 million is a pretty safe bet for the end result in domestically. But I think just the international market, the international push, I would actually akin this to probably a more similar run to the original Pacific Rim than you would imagine, like most people would probably imagine. Probably a big, strong run in Japan and China, respectively, to kind of push this to about 430 million type of end result, which not great, probably barely enough to break even in general, and then hopefully a strong kind of cult classic run in the home market, just to show them kind of it would be a good kind of knocking on the door saying that this wasn't a huge success, but it did make money, and that's what's really important at the end of the day.
I mean, ultimately, it seems like they're really catering for the international box office in Hollywood these days, so it might be a moot point what the domestic is for a movie like this. If it does well enough overseas, they'll probably just make more.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think that's what's really important. But anyway, guys, we've been talking about this for a while. I think we've basically said everything we need to say, unless Mike has anything left to say.
Scarlett Johansson gets naked on TV and on the movie screen. I'm totally there all day, every day.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm gonna go see it. I can't wait. Actually, I really can't wait to see this film. It looks good in my opinion. But guys, tell us what you think about the movie. Tell us how much you think the movie's gonna make. Tell us whether you think the whitewashing is a deal. Tell us if you think this movie should be supported by the anime community. Please make sure to go check out Mike. He does a lot of awesome content for you guys. Dragon Ball content for anyone who subscribes to me for that and everything, and you don't for whatever reason already sub to Mike. Please make sure to go sub to him. He's makes some awesome stuff. Anyway. We're going to catch you on the next video. Bye.
All right. See you later, guys.